Hello, today I'd like to talk to you about skewers. We mentioned those in the video about decoys, and I just thought to make it clear what a skewer is. A pin we've just looked at, which is where we have three pieces in our line: bishop, knight, king, and we say the knight is pinned against the king. If it moves, it's going to be check, so that's illegal. Knight can't move, and we can either poke it with a pawn, or we can win something that the knight is pretending to defend. And so that's a pin with a smaller value piece in front of a high value piece. That's a pin. And a skewer is the other way around, so that the pin, the piece in the middle, is the higher value piece and has to move out of the way. I think the most common form of where you see this in a skewer, they're not so common as pins. The commonest skewer I ever see is where there's a check on the back rank by a piece, check against the king, and then the king has to move out of the way, and you take the rook on an otherwise empty back rank. So that's the idea of a skewer. Let's have a look at one in a real game. Not, as I say, not ever so common. And so here's a game between Morgado and Torres from 1968. Takes on e5, queen h4, very ambitious. Takes on f5, queen e4 check, and now bishop takes, knight to c3, queen to g4, d5, king d8, and now double attack on the queen and the bishop. The queen comes to e4, and now we've got two pieces in a line, a big one and a little one, and white plays bishop to d3, and it can reach through the big piece to the little piece at the back, and that's a skewer. White wins a piece by a skewer. So not ever so common, but apart from that case of the back rank, but that's a nice example of one. I'm sure you've got the idea, but just to rub it home, I'll play show you an example with in a study by Valery Chekova in a very simple position. I do think these are pretty. So in this position, well, let's just kick it off and see what's going on. We've got a discovered check, knight to e5 check. So it's check, so the king has to move, can't move anything in the way, can't capture the queen. And if the king takes the knight on e5, then we win the queen by a skewer. Queen h2 check, king moves out of the way, and we'll win the queen on b8 there. So check from the knight, and the king can't take the knight on e5, which is important to remember. And so if king to e3, say, stepping out of the way, we'll see if we can chase it around so that it has to take the knight or do something else terrible. Queen to e1 check, king goes back to f4. If it went to d4, we've got a fork on c6 there. So king goes to f4, queen to f2 check, and again we can't take the knight because of the skewer. King to g5, queen to g3 check, and if the king goes to the h file, it's going to get mated. So king to f5, queen to g4 check, very cheeky, trying to push it towards the knight. King's still not tempted to move to take the knight. King to f6 check, and now we've got a fork set up on the d7 square. So quite a richness of tactics in a very simple setting there by Valery Chekova. I hope you enjoyed that. See you next time.